Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, it is a mock draft Monday edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. On today's show, it is time for a 7-round mock draft. I'm going to go through all 7 picks that the Tennessee Titans have, go through all 7 rounds, and put together the best possible draft class that I can for the Tennessee Titans. So all of that and much more on a Mock Draft Monday edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Let's get it.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Titans fans, it is a Mock Draft Monday edition of the Locked On Titans podcast, and it is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. But we are going to get into my 7-round mock draft for the Tennessee Titans, going from pick 1 all the way to pick 7, trying to put together a solid draft class that can propel the Titans to their first Super Bowl championship. But before we get into that, I got to thank you guys for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen every day. If this is your first ever listen to the Locked On Titans podcast, make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you do stream. I am going to be putting out daily, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content, not only during the season, but all year long. And the show is always free and always available on all platforms. And that includes the Locked On Titans YouTube channel. Subscribe over there as well. Smash that notification bell so you know when all of my content goes live. Throw a thumbs up on the video if you're watching on YouTube right now. And make sure you check me out on social media for additional content, including my film analysis on Twitter at Tic Tac Titans, on Facebook at Locked On Titans Pod. But with all that being said, we got to get into the toughest decision that I had to make throughout this 7-round mock draft, and it came with pick 26. So I'm doing the mock draft on the Draft Network's Mock Draft Simulator. You guys can check that out. It's a great website, great resource for you, but had a lot of options on the board at pick 26. So had interior offensive lineman Kenyon Green, who would be a perfect fit for the Titans. Had quarterbacks on the board like Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, who the Titans have shown an affinity for in the pre-draft process. But what it really came down to for me was 2 wide receivers. Because even though the Titans have added Robert Woods, I still see wide receiver as the number 1 need on this football team. And there were 2 good options available. Chris Olave from Ohio State and Treylon Burks from Arkansas. I mean, what a tough decision. So just looking at the decision, Chris Olave, precise route runner, excellent vertical speed, would be great for the deep shots off of play action that the Titans have built within their offense. I mean, it would be a perfect fit across from A.J. Brown to have Chris Olave taking the top off the defense, going vertically, challenging the safeties, trying to get behind him on those deep post corners, trying to get behind them on those deep crossers. I mean, Chris Olave would be a great complement to the physicality that is A.J. Brown. But on the flip side, Treylon Burks is exactly what the Titans are looking for as a wide receiver. Big, physical, 6'3", over 200 pounds. He's a guy who's good with the ball in his hands. He played wildcat quarterback. They used him on gadget plays, threw him bubble screens and passes just to get the ball in his hands so he can make plays, run after catch. So big, physical, run after catch ability, versatility within the offense. I mean, I can't lie to you guys here. Treylon Burks just fits the Titans offense like a glove. Now, you could say, hey, Robert Woods is that possession guy, that short route runner, yards after catch, gives you all that all-around ability that you want next to A.J. Brown. Now they need to add the speed element, which, quite honestly, that's where I land. The Titans need to add some speed, some dynamic elements to their offense, some verticality to the offense to open up the middle of the field for A.J. Brown and let him what he does best. Last year, the Titans were trying to have A.J. Brown be the guy who was running vertically so that they could have a beat up Julio Jones settle down over the middle and not have to go too far. The Titans have to let A.J. Brown get back to doing what he does best. They need a vertical element to the offense, a guy that can complement A.J. Brown's physicality going over the middle of the field, going forward for a decade plus. And that guy is Chris Olave. He is going to be, there is just no doubt in my mind that Chris Olave is going to be a 1,000-yard receiver in this league. Maybe that doesn't happen in his rookie year, but he's just got too much reliability with the hands, with the route running, with the versatility. I mean, you add in the speed. I know that he's a slight build guy. The Titans like to be the best team off the bus. They like big-bodied, physical receivers. But you have Nick Westbrook-Akina who can give you that. You have Robert Woods, who is a sturdy guy who goes over the middle. He's not going to be a vertical threat for you. So you have to find a way to add that vertical speed. It's a tough choice. I really like Burks. I think there's a better chance that Burks is actually there at 26 than I think there's a chance that Olave is there at 26. But if I had to decide between Treylon Burks and Chris Olave for the Titans after the acquisition of Robert Woods and knowing that they believe in NWI, I got to go with the speedster, with the route doctor out of Ohio State, Chris Olave, taking the top off the defense, running those deep vertical routes over the middle of the field to open up the intermediate areas for A.J. Brown to get the ball and do damage with yards after the catch. I know that it kind of goes away from the Titans' profile of what they look for. I think Burks would probably be their selection, but if I'm doing what I think is best for the Tennessee Titans, give me that speed threat, give me that vertical threat that could pair with A.J. Brown and be a perfect complement for a decade to come. But that's going to do it for our conversation around the first pick, which ultimately was the toughest selection that I had to make. We're going to get into the day two options where the Titans also hit a position of need that's also a pass catcher. Before we get into that, I got to tell you guys about the best tasting protein bars in the galaxy from our friends over at Built Bar. With Built Bars, you get the best of both worlds when it comes to a protein bar. Yes, it's going to be healthy for you, but it's also absolutely delicious as well. They have tremendous flavors available. There's something for everybody. My favorites are the peanut butter brownie, the white chocolate cheesecake, the salted caramel. They also have some great textures with their bars, like the puff bars, which are a marshmallowy consistency. And then they have the crunch bars, which are super crunchy. I love those as well. But it's the health aspect that brings you in. You get low calorie, low sugar, high protein, high fiber. It's great as a healthy meal substitute or just a guilt-free snack. Make sure you check out the best tasting protein bars ever, the Built Bars from our friends over at Built.com. Go there right now, Built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15. You're going to get 15% off your order. Once again, that's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Titans fans, let's continue this Mock Draft Monday edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We just talked about pick number 26, what the Titans would do there, what I would do there. Ultimately, I landed on Chris Olave, the speedster out of Ohio State, to pair with A.J. Brown. But 6 more picks to go, a lot to discuss. Before we get into them, do want to thank you guys for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen every day. Also got to tell you guys about the national show, the Locked On NFL podcast. You get your Titans news here with me on Locked On Titans. Now, follow that up with all of your NFL news, all your national news with the Locked On NFL podcast. It's free and available on all platforms, and that includes the Locked On NFL YouTube channel. I am one of the hosts of the national show and got some big news coming up here soon for you guys. So before that news comes down the pike, I would appreciate if you would subscribe to the Locked On NFL YouTube channel, subscribe to the Locked On NFL podcast. Again, bringing you that national NFL news in under 30 minutes, Monday through Friday. But moving forward here, 3 picks that we need to talk about in this section here before we talk about the last 3 picks the Titans are going to make to cap off the show. But pick number 90, the Titans have a huge break between pick number 26 and pick number 90. A break that I think eventually they're going to bridge, whether that be a trade back at 26 to get into the 30s or maybe the early 40s, whether that be a trade up from 90 to get more in the 70 to 80 range. Either way, I see the Titans bridging that gap somehow, but Not throwing in trades in this mock draft, going off what the picks the Titans have. And at pick number 90, I had a lot of good options, specifically at tight end. So you had Isaiah Likely, you had Cade Otton, you had Jeremy Rutker, all available. Greg Dulcich was available. You also had some interior offensive linemen that were available, like a Cole Strange, for example, that made a lot of sense for the Titans. But for me, I'm loading up on pass catchers, and I don't care if the Titans went out and got Austin Hooper on a one-year deal. I don't care if the Titans brought back Jeff Swaim on a one-year deal. The Titans need to begin grooming a long-term tackle, a cheap tackle on a rookie contract, and I could not pass up on the big play possibilities, on the versatility, on the competitiveness of Isaiah Likely, the tight end out of Coastal Carolina. Again, he made big plays and run after the catch opportunities all year long. They get the ball to him on short routes. He can take it all the way down the field. He can break tackles. He's got good vertical speed. Even if he's not a change of direction monster, he's got good speed overall and the versatility. He could play the Y position in line. He could play the H-back. He could play a move tight end. He can flex out and play in the slot. He can play in the boundary and run slants and in routes. He can do so much within an offense. I think he would just be a perfect fit for the Titans. Again, great on vertical routes, getting down the seam. He's even shown the ability to run some double moves as well. So he could really take advantage of the middle of the field for the Titans, something that Jonnu Smith used to be able to do. And I think Isaiah Likely gives you a lot of that Jonnu Smith ability, but even more. Quite frankly, he's a much better route runner than Jonnu Smith ever became. So I really like Isaiah Likely. He's a smart guy. Speaking of that route running, he showed the ability to understand how to set up certain routes against defenders, also understand where to sit down in zone coverage. He's a willing blocker, a competitive blocker. He needs a little more technique work as a blocker, but the role I envision for Isaiah Likely coming in with the Titans, going to be a backup tight end who plays half of the rundown scenarios, plays a lot of the third down scenarios as a second tight end. If the Titans are running a two tight end formation on third down, they're going to have Austin Hooper and Isaiah Likely out there. If they want to mix things up on second down and keep the defense off on their toes, they can have Austin Hooper and Isaiah Likely out there. If you have Hooper and Swaim, there's a good chance that's a run play. So if the Titans can just do a rotation with all three of those tight ends to keep the defense on their toes and keep them off balance and not telegraph what play call they're going with, that would just be perfect. So the Titans have three tight ends that can do it all. You can groom Likely. Who knows what he becomes? Likely could become one of the best tight ends in the NFL with the right grooming. And I feel like with the Titans at pick 90, he gets the opportunity to do that. So Isaiah Likely, tight end out of Coastal Carolina, really like his fit with the Titans. And at pick 90, I think that's an incredible value. I think there's a good chance he goes in the 70s when the draft actually comes around. Pick 131, another big gap for the Titans, 41 picks before they go again. But at some point, we have to address the offensive line. And with the options getting thinner and thinner on the O-line, I decided to go ahead and take my shot on a guy in Cam Jurgens out of Nebraska. 6'3", 305 pounds, a little bit undersized. That's the knock on Cam Jurgens. He's a guy who needs to develop strength. He needs to add weight. He needs to add mass. Doesn't have an incredibly strong anchor against a bull rush or a really strong nose tackle. That's something he has to work on. But scheme-wise, he fits perfect for the Titans. He's a developmental, undersized center who is excellent in zone blocking, has good athleticism, good quickness, good speed, understands how to get those combo blocks, get up to the second level, cut off a linebacker. So if you have Dylan Radin starting at left guard, Jamarco Jones at right tackle, you have my preferred Aaron Brewer at left guard with Dylan Radins at right tackle. You can bring in Cam Jurgens. He can compete for a starting spot on the interior offensive line. Eventually, you move either Aaron Brewer to center with Cam Jurgens at left guard, or you let Cam Jurgens take over at left guard, or you move Cam Jurgens to center, let Aaron Brewer stay at left guard. Either way, those guys can be interchangeable. You can continue to develop them. And in that time, while developing, Jurgens can put on some more mass, put on some more strength, and have some time to develop that portion of his game. So I think that'd be a good fit for the Titans, especially at 131. At 143, this is a name that I've really locked onto. The Titans need to add a young safety. My thought process right now is that Dane Cruikshank is probably going to move on and sign a new deal with a different team. So why not replace him with another Dane? Dane Belton, the matchup safety out of Iowa. He can do a lot of the things that Dane Cruikshank was asked to do late in his career with the Titans. He can be a matchup guy on tight ends, play sub package, playing that dime package that the Titans use, 6 defensive backs. Again, a matchup guy who can go up against tight ends, develop that. The Titans are going to need that role replaced as Dane Cruikshank most likely moves on to a new team. So Isaiah Likely at tight end, Cam Jurgens at interior offensive line, Dane Belton at safety as a matchup guy to go with Chris Olave in the first round. I think this is a great start for the Tennessee Titans. We'll hit on the last 3 picks of the draft in just a moment. Before we do, I do want to tell you guys about Athletic Greens. I've been using their product, the AG1, for the last few weeks. And since I started taking Athletic Greens, I just feel absolutely fantastic. It's a super healthy way to start your day. It's filled with a ton of great stuff. I mean, 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, adaptogens. It makes me feel like I have more energy throughout the day. It makes me feel like I can kind of reach higher heights when I'm using that energy. I can go longer, I can go quicker, I can be more efficient. It's just a jump start to your body during the day. Great way to incorporate a healthy beginning into your healthy lifestyle. Just take a scoop of the AG1, throw it into some water, mix it up, you drink it down. It's an easy way, a very effective way, again, to start your day, to stay healthy. I'm going to make it easy. Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NFL network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NFL network to take ownership over your health and to pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Titans fans, we are going to cap off this mock draft Monday edition of the Locked On Titans podcast, going over the last 3 picks that the Titans would have in the draft: 161, 204, 219. Before we get into them, do want to thank you guys again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen every day. As for your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. We're doing a mock draft Monday. It's draft season. You need to get ready as best as possible, and you can do that with the Locked On NFL Draft podcast hosted by Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker. They're bringing you the best of both worlds from a draft perspective. You're getting the front office insights, but also analyzing all of the prospects. Check out the Locked On NFL Draft podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Is free and available on all platforms. But we've got wide receiver, speed threat, Chris Olave added to the mix. We've got the developed tight end who's ready to help out immediately as well in Isaiah Likely. We got an interior offensive lineman coming in ready to compete in Cam Jurgens. And we got that matchup safety, that young safety that the Titans can begin grooming to take Dane Cruikshank's place. Now, we need to add some role players here at positions that the Titans could use some young reinforcements. Number 1, I've been asking for it. I don't think Trenton Cannon makes the roster. I don't care about Jordan Wilkins. I don't think he's an NFL level player anyway. He'll be on a practice squad. Dontrell Hilliard is solid, but the Titans need a young rookie running back who can come in and not only supplement Derrick Henry and complement Derrick Henry, but also maybe take away some carries eventually to help him out. And that's why there's a name that I've been locked onto, and it's Tyler Goodson from Iowa. Back-to-back Iowa players. I trust Kirk Ferentz and his staff to develop NFL-ready players. But Tyler Goodson has really picked up steam in the draft process. He's a guy who 5'9", he's a smaller guy, got good speed, But he's shown the ability to run very well in a zone run system, which Iowa can employ, but also running some gap stuff. And the Titans have been mixing in more gap runs, especially in 2021. So he's shown versatility there. He's got good ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, showed some really good chops doing that during the combine and pro day processes. So really like Tyler Goodson as a young, versatile running back who can run the system that the Titans are employing, but also complement Derrick Henry by being a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield, good in pass protection as well, which absolutely matters to the Titans. I like Tyler Goodson as that young rookie running back the Titans can start develop as a complement to Derrick Henry and maybe even a spell for Derrick Henry in some of those carries as well. At 204, got to take a chance here on another Virginia Tech cornerback, and that's Jermaine Waller, 6'1". He's got long arms, very good at press coverage, a specification on man coverage at Virginia Tech, just like all the stuff that the Titans liked about Caleb Farley. Jermaine Waller's giving you that on a much lower scale, of course, being taken at 204. Needs some development, needs to understand route combinations, needs to be more in tune with what the quarterback and the offense is trying to do. So there's some mental aspects of the game that he needs to catch up on, but he's got good length, good size, good speed, does all the stuff that the Titans are looking to do, just needs some more development as a late round cornerback. I think Jermaine Waller could make a ton of sense. And then finally, at pick 219, really like this pick, Amare Barno from Virginia Tech as well, doubling up there on Virginia Tech, but he's an edge rusher, and this is a developmental pick. But you know what you can't develop? Length, versatility, bend, athleticism. I mean, Amari Barno has all of that in spades. Great length, 6'6". He's going to be a guy who could play in hybrid fronts as a hand in the dirt defensive end or an edge linebacker. And here's the thing. When it comes to versatility, it's not just the fronts and the hybrid fronts that he can be in. He's a guy who's shown that he can drop back into coverage. He can play against the run. He has great bend around the edge and pass rush. So the Titans like to use their outside linebackers, dropping into coverage, playing against the run, playing off-ball linebacker. Well, Barno came in as an off-ball inside linebacker and transitioned to the edge rusher position. So he's already used to and got some schooling in how to drop back into coverage and be an off-ball linebacker. Think about a guy who can be a backup to Harold Landry and eventually turn into a rotational pass rusher. I think Amari would be a perfect fit. And because the Titans have Rashad Weaver, Bud Dupree, Danico Autry, Harold Landry, Ola Adaney, because the Titans have all those guys, they can bring Barno along slowly and really hone in on the mental aspects of the game. And then once he's got the mental down, his physical tools, the length, the speed, the bend, the athleticism, the versatility, all of that can take over. And I think the Titans could have a really solid player on their hands. So that is my 7-round mock draft. We got Chris Olave, Isaiah Likely, Cam Jurgens, Dane Belton, Tyler Goodson, Jermaine Waller, and Amari Barno. That is wide receiver, tight end, interior offensive line, safety, running back, cornerback, and edge rusher. I mean, covering all of the bases for the Tennessee Titans. Make sure you guys tell me down below in the comments on YouTube what you would have done at some of these spots, what positions you are targeting. But I'm very, very happy with the mock draft that I put together here for the Titans. Next week, I am going to do the fan-made mock draft Monday. I'm going to be taking a look at your guys' mock drafts. Send in those. I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to pick yet, but if you want to get those to me, send them as a DM, tag me on Twitter, whatever you want to do. I'll try to go through as many of them as I possibly can next Monday. Tomorrow is going to be a Twitter Tuesday. Going to do a mailbag. Going to be answering your guys' questions. Remember, you can send those questions in as a 5-star review on Apple iTunes or tag me on Twitter at TicTacTitans and send those questions to me there. But that's going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.